Hi, I'm Morgan Dreamus with RT Book Reviews, and today I'm joined with Elizabeth Hoyt, historical romance author who's won pretty much every award out there, legions of fans.
Not everyone. There is still some to conquer.
And we're here at RWA, the National Conference, and having a great time. I know you're always like super eager to jump in and help new authors.
Yeah.
You give excellent workshops where you teach, you bring them into the fold, into the writing fold. I have to ask, out of all of the years that you've been doing this, is there one piece of advice that like all the aspiring authors out there, to reach status of Elizabeth Hoyt, you need to do?
I think you need it. Well, first of all, you have to write every day, which is really important because you only learn to write by writing. And then I think you have to write what you enjoy writing, because at the end of the day, if you start trying to write something to the market, first of all, nobody can do it, and second of all, you're going to end up writing something that is not from the heart. So you want to write what you enjoy and do it for yourself first of all, because it may never get published, and then once it gets published, it may bomb, and people may hate it. But if you like it yourself, then you never feel ashamed of it, and you feel proud of what you've put out there.
That's great. And so I'm assuming that you love the Georgian period, because that's your series right now. The Maiden Leighton series is set in kind of the mid 1700s.
Yes.
In London.
Yes.
And in England.
Yes. London is in England. Yes.
Thank you.
Very good.
Geography.
Top marks.
See, what did I say about her teaching? and so, if you had the choice, if you could hop in, Marty McFly's time machine and go back, would you? Would this be a place you'd visit?
No, dude, not at all. Because they had like smallpox back then, and other poxes, and they had cholera, and they, I enjoy visiting in my mind, but in real life, no. I think I'd, drop down and be immediately hit over the head and killed by, the footpad that's there.
If you could have like a backpack full of antibiotics with you, would you then go?
No, it's not so much antibiotics, but if I could land, for sure, in an upper class household with servants, that would be kind of nice, actually. Having servants waiting on me hand and foot at all times of the day, that would be great, actually.
Well, it's interesting.
A butler,
it's interesting you mentioned servants. Wait a second, because your upcoming book, your heroine Artemis is actually a servant.
She's kind of in between. She's a lady's companion, which is one of those unfortunate, situations where you're a poor relation, and you can't. And she's upper class actually, but her family's been the victim of scandal because her brother has been declared insane. So once you're insane, you've got madness tainting the family. Everybody's and they're poor too. Nobody wants to have anything to do with you. So she's poor, but upper class. So she can't become a servant, and she doesn't really have enough education to become a servant, sadly. But she's not upper class, so she's in between, and that's a really sad place to be, actually, for a woman, because you can't get married usually. Nobody's going to offer for you, and you're not actually friends with the people who are the servants. But you're not friends with the people who are upper class either. So she's a lady's companion, which means she's kind of a dog's body for her cousin. Is actually several times removed cousin, Lady Penelope. So she's holding the dog at all times.
I was going to say she is kind of, her whole life kind of revolves around her cousin. Like she can't make a lot of decisions for herself because it's whatever Penelope wants to do. She just has to kind of follow along. Even when it's not necessarily a good idea to go along with Penelope's
Exactly, because Penelope's kind of an airhead. Penelope's decided, actually I based Penelope on some of the early, not to be bad or anything, but the early romances we used to have the heroines who were going to be wild and and different and out there to gain the hero's attention. And if you think about it in real life, really, I don't think so. So Penelope takes a dare that she's going to go into St. Giles, the worst slum in London, at midnight and drink gin. And of course, the book opens, Duke of Midnight opens with them being confronted by two footpads who are going to do the awful things to them if they're not rescued. Fortunately, they're rescued, though, so...
The ghost.
The ghost comes and rescues him. He literally drops down out of the sky.
Very Spider-Man, Batman-esque. Your superhero, your historical superhero jumping to the rescue. And we have to talk about the ghost, because when you first started the series, we had these great heroes. Mickey, of course, jumps out in everyone's head.
My infamous land pirate without a ship.
Land pirate, exactly. I kind of call him, he's almost like a mafia guy where he kind of runs the bad section of town.
Yeah, he's a mobster.
And then you have in another book, Winter Makepeace, and he is a headmaster.
Schoolmaster.
And so he's a little bit more like the educated, refined.
He's educated, but he's middle to lower class, really. He's the son of a brewmaster, so he's not upper class at all.
And so now the Duke in this
Duke
story
is upper class.
and so you really change up your heroes though. You never get kind of the same kind of hero, and this is interesting. And the reason for that is that many of your heroes assume this identity as the ghost of St. Giles, and it's they wear the motley and the leggings, which a hero in leggings. I didn't believe it at first, but reading your books,
they
works.
are also wearing those big, huge thigh boots that are kind of sexy. Actually,
so think Musketeers, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so when you sit down to craft heroes, like are you just like, I'm going to go the absolute opposite of before, or how do you do that?
Not usually. No. I go by character. So I'm interested in. First of all, it's part of the reason I like the Georgian period is because it's such a huge contrast between the really poor people who are living starving on the streets and the really rich people who are literally in gilded. I mean, at this time period, they put gold on everything. Walls, furniture, their dresses,
little gaudy,
a little over the top. Yeah. So this huge contrast, and I like to see people from both, situations. And in historical, we often go for the aristocrats because they're, the people with all the power. I think it's interesting sometimes to go with a hero who doesn't have powers by right, by birthright, and to see how he can become strong in a time period where he doesn't have much power, doesn't have much, ways of becoming a strong man, but he's still how you can make him sexy and interesting. So I think that's how I end up with sometimes lower class. I mean, Mickey was lower class. He was a Irish immigrant, so he's came from nothing. His mother was a prostitute, and Makepeace is also pretty much middle class, a merchant person. And then it is kind of fun to get to the aristocrats too and see how they're doing. You can't totally ignore the aristocrats. So.
Well, like a normal aristocrat would, they have their club they would go to, and they, Parliament obviously they deal with that, and they've got their lands. They look over their books for all their lands and everything. Your Duke has a side gig where he, like we said, dresses up in motley, and he goes into the worst neighborhoods in London, and he kind of just saves people, just kind of make sure that, women don't get abducted and children are taken care of. And that's not normally what you would see Duke doing.
No, it isn't. He really is based on Batman in that he had a terrible experience when he was a child. His parents were murdered. And that was laid out through the main lane, because we already saw his sister was in book 2. That was Lady Hero. Their parents were murdered when Lady Hero was I think 7 or 8, but he was 14. And so for him, and he was there at the time. So there's this mystery about what exactly happened and why he's so scarred by it. So he's basically looking for the murderer of his parents, and he's been looking this entire time. So he's kind of stuck in time. He's stuck trying to get over this terrible traumatic event that happened to him at a very key moment, adolescence, especially for boys, especially when it was his father who died. It's just a very key moment for him.
Artemis comes in. He finds her and her cousin in a compromising position because footpads are after them. Right. He saves them, and he notices right away that Artemis isn't like a normal woman. She actually has a knife that she's carried because she's not stupid. She knows this is a bad part of town. We need to protect her.
Bad idea, lady.
And that really, all of a sudden for him, that was like, who is this? Like, and why does she have that? And he starts, like, almost immediately, the respect for her is right there because he realizes that she's not only going to take care of herself, she's attempting to take care of her cousin, the nitwit over here that's making these decisions. And there's kind of that immediate spark between them. However, as the Duke, he has to make a good marriage, and so she's not necessarily on the list of candidates, but Penelope's on the list of candidates.
Yes, Penelope, her cousin, is an heiress, very beautiful. She's actually 20 years ago she would have been the heroine of the novel. She's gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. She's got the pansy purple eyes. She's got the raven locks. She's very rich. She's very vivacious. But I like my heroine to be a little more than beautiful and vivacious. So my heroine is actually the lady's maid who's throughout these books we don't see her very much. She's been kind of in the background. As a lady's maid, you would be in the background. And so the tension here is that who he's supposed to marry as the Duke. You know, obviously the heiress who looks beautiful and all that, and who he's really attracted to. The woman who's got the tainted family line, who is poor, who talks back to him, who really doesn't and has a knife in her boot, and Giles.
And blackmails him.
She
is not afraid. She goes in and she has, like you said, her brother has been put in an asylum, and she knows that the Duke has enough power to get him released. And so when she finds out his secrets, she is like, I'm going to save my family, and this is the way to do it.
Yeah,
and how many people would be able to do that?
It was interesting because when I was turning this book into my agent, she's my beta reader, and she called Artemis badass, which I thought was really funny because you don't usually think of historical heroines as badass unless they really are, like, you know, kick-ass. And she doesn't actually kick ass, but she's very strong personality-wise. She's definitely his equal. And it's not only her brother, it's her twin brother. It's Artemis and Apollo. They're twins, and he was 4 years before this book's open. He was found with 3 of his friends murdered. He can't remember what happened because he was blackout drunk. And they just kind of hushed it up by throwing him into Bedlam because he was an aristocrat. And he stuck there. And Bedlam, of course, was a terrible, terrible place at this time period. Most people didn't make it out alive. And so she's been trying all this time to get him out. And when she realizes what the Duke, who he is, she immediately, even though she's attracted to him, she immediately realizes that she needs to get her brother out. And in the book, I talk about it being taking a tiger by the tail. That, you know, and she realizes at the time, you know, she's made this, it's kind of a risky move here because he's very powerful. Not only as a Duke, but he's also a very powerful person, a member of Parliament. It's in the government. So he could pretty much squash her if he really wanted to. But he doesn't squash her.
I don't want any spoilers, but I'm of course going to have to ask about Apollo. Is he possibly in the Maiden Lane series? Maybe
possibly. Well, I don't think we actually let him rot in Bedlam. He may get out.
I'm assuming that there might be.
Yes,
okay.
I do have plans for Apollo, though. Yes.
Okay, well, October, we have Duke of Midnight, beautiful cover, beautiful
it is, it's
dress.
Gorgeous.
All of your covers have been just amazing,
Thank
and
you.
they really bring, I don't know, just that the couple is just so engrossed with each other on these covers, and they're beautiful. And so yes, so October, Duke of Midnight, and the 6th in the Maiden Lane series.
It's the 6th one, yes.
But you can pick them up anywhere. I've enjoyed all of them, but you can really pick anywhere and just have a great time. Thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thank you, Morgan.
And have a great rest of the convention.
You too.